Hashrate is sponsored by Vanta Investment DAO. Get the Vanta NFT on OpenSea and gain instant access to an exclusive community that gets allocations in cutting-edge sectors like GameFi, DeFi, artificial intelligence, and infrastructure. Vanta is a powerhouse hive mind of over 250 visionaries, from trailblazing company founders to savvy investors to a cold community influencing over 10 million followers on X. Join key industry players like Mario Nawfal, Seed Phrase, the CEO of QuantStamp, and myself, Mark Jeffrey, among others, who are already navigating the private investment landscape together through Vanta. Get your Vanta NFT and join the action today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Hashrate. We're going to do stablecoin spectacular. So let's jump in. We're going to cover Ethena. We're going to cover this new thing that I just noticed that popped up called BAMK and the NUSD stablecoin on BRC20 and Ruins on the Bitcoin blockchain. So a Bitcoin native stablecoin attempt based partly on what we've seen, the success of Ethena on Ethereum. So to understand all this, though, I got to rewind back a little bit to things like MIM and Terra Luna. Okay, so let's start first with Terra Luna. We all know it's a shit show, but let's look at it. So Terra Luna was a fully crypto-backed stablecoin. So it was an attempt to create basically a stablecoin that was very unlike Tether and USD, the Circle stablecoin. Those stablecoins, you had to have dollars, or you still have to have dollars in an actual fiat bank account, like Bank of America or something like that, to back one for one all of the crypto dollars that you're issuing on the blockchain. So Terra Luna looked at that, and some other folks previously had looked at that and said, that's bad. We don't want to be connected to the fiat banking system in any way, because what happens if the banks go belly up? We want dollars that are on chain, that are somehow backed fully by crypto assets. So Terra Luna basically built the system where the Terra token, which was their stablecoin, was backed by the free-ranging Luna token, which was, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that, where the value of it is just whatever the market said it was. And so the Luna token had to be burned to create Terra tokens. Now, anybody could do this. So it was fully open for minting and burning, and you could go the other direction as well. So you burn Terra to make Luna, you burn Luna to make Terra, etc. And the idea was that the more the Terra stablecoin was adopted, the greater the value of Luna would become, right? So you could not participate in Tether, which was one of the greatest businesses of all time, but you could participate in this new stablecoin economy by owning Luna and just hanging on to it. And for a good year and a half or so, that worked wonderfully. However, it was a Death Star. It had a single point of failure. So when it fell apart, when somebody pulled at one of the threads, the entire thing came tumbling down in about 48 hours. So it did not. So basically, for that reason and other reasons, it fell apart. Now, what did it do right? Well, it had yield. So it had a thing called the Anchor Protocol, where you deposited your Terra tokens, your stable coins, and you could get 20% APY. This was pretty awesome. So the killer app for stable coins, we learned, is yield. Everybody wants yield. And in the Terra Luna system, how did it get that yield? Well, it just printed more stable coins, right? So they, in the beginning of sort of Terra Luna time, they minted a giant amount of Luna that the foundation just had to use at its disposal. And to cover the yield that it was paying out, that 20% APY, it just burned Luna to make more Terra to give it to you. So it just printed money. It was fake yield in a sense. But then again, that's exactly what the Federal Reserve does with treasuries, right? So you put your money into a treasury, it promises you 5% APY right now. And where does it get it from? Well, it just prints it and gives it to you, right? So it's not really materially different from the way the regular fiat U.S. Reserve dollar works. But we did learn one thing from this. So even though Terra Luna was a shit show, the yield on stablecoins is the killer app. That's what will drive adoption of your stablecoin. Now, as I said earlier, Do Kwon, who is the lead person in charge, who basically created Terra Luna, he allowed anyone to redeem or mint Terra for Luna. And he also sold a massive amount of UST over the table to purchase Bitcoin, ostensibly to back the Terra Luna system with additional collateral other than Luna. And was this a good idea or not? Unclear. We'll never find out because what he did when he basically used UST to buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin, he armed his enemy. So because we do think that Terra Luna was attacked. We think it was probably Citadel. We don't know this for sure. But it was somebody who had billions of dollars at their disposal. So the list of those people is pretty small. And I won't go into the entire attack, but basically what they did was they used that massive amount of Terra to depeg Terra on Curve. So cause it to become worth less than $1. And it went from being worth $1 to 90 cents to 80 cents, and then, pretty much all the way down to 9 cents and zero at the end. So by allowing anyone to mint and burn Terra and Luna, Do Kwon armed someone else and gave them the ability to tip over his peg, right? So that is something we've learned is a mistake. You don't want to just allow anybody to mint and burn. So I look at Terra Luna as sort of like the alchemy stage, if you will. So it's not actual chemistry, but we do have chemicals and beakers, and we're headed the right direction. There's some good ideas here, but there's still ultimately too much magical thinking involved. It's not real science. It's not real yield yet, right? So if you've seen the three body problem, you watch the progression as the Trisolarians, they first invent the I Ching, right, to predict where the suns are going to be and when they're going to have a chaotic period, when they're going to have a stable period. It doesn't work, but they are in the right direction in trying to model their three-body system, right? And eventually they move on to calculus and computers, and that works better. It's ultimately not the solution, but it does work a lot better, and I think that's sort of the stage that we're entering right now. So I'm going to talk next a little bit about MIM, which is Magic Internet Money. And this is a construction that I did like. It's not a Death Star. It doesn't have a single point of failure. Instead of having one coin that backs it, it accepts up to 30 or so other yield-bearing assets. So these are other coins that produce yield in some way. They will accept those as collateral. And that entire system, each one of those is backed 1.5x, usually, sometimes 2x, by the collateral. So it's not capital efficient, right, in the sense that ideally you want to go one for one. You don't, if I show up with, $100 worth of Bitcoin, I want $100 worth of stablecoin, ideally. Now, of course, you can't really do that in this particular system, because what happens if the value of Bitcoin suddenly becomes worth a quarter of what you put into the system? Now your dollars that you've created out of thin air are only half backed by the Bitcoin that you have on reserve. So these systems typically will require you to at least 1.5x back your with collateral your dollar-based asset, and if the collateral falls in value beneath a certain level of liquidation threshold, they'll liquidate it. They'll just sell it for another form of dollar, like Tether or USDC, something like that, just to make sure that they are fully backed at all time. So this system this design worked pretty well. And, but it's not capital efficient, as I said. And also anyone can mint and burn in this system. So it's very much like Terra Luna in that sense. And also I should say that this particular, one of the assets they did accept back in the old days was Terra. So when Terra went to zero, this was a great stress test of this particular system. And MIM did depeg briefly to about 90 cents for about a week or so, as Terra Luna dove to zero. But remember, there's 30 assets, so there were 29 other assets that were just fine. And the entire thing was roughly 1.5x to 2x backed by these other assets. So in the end, it was fine. MIM, it survived. It survived an extreme stress test, right? The galactic shitstorm that was the Terra Luna collapse. MIM and Spell survived. So this design actually worked pretty well, even though it is not capital efficient. Okay, so now this is Ethena, and it is the the new kid on the block. It's another attempt at a crypto native stablecoin. So the idea is there is no bank account anywhere. It's backed entirely by Ethereum and I believe Bitcoin now. I know it's definitely Ethereum. And like the previous attempt, Terra Luna, it incorporates the killer app of yield into the system. So USDe is the stable coin of the Ethena ecosystem. And at the moment, you can get 35.9% APY. And this changes, it ranges around. And they are getting it from a real place, which I will explain in a second. They're not just printing more USDe. And this is extremely significant. It's real yield. This is calculus and computers. It's not the I Ching, right? So it's not alchemy. It's actually chemistry. So this is a significant improvement. Right now, they've got about $3 billion worth of USDe issued. So this is the fastest ascent of a new stable coin ever. So far, it's working quite well. And this yield is really what's attracting people into the system. Okay, so now how are they doing this, right? Like, how does it work? Well, in order to understand that, you have to understand something else called perpetual swaps. And the guy who sort of came up with this idea is a guy named Arthur Hayes. And he invented the perpetual swap, something like 7 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But it was sort of at the beginning of the crypto era. And what it is a type of future. However, most future contracts have an end date. You basically, a future is you're betting on corn, right? So you're basically saying, I will sell the right to buy corn in October right now for this price. And people speculate on what the price of corn is going to be and either will buy or sell the shares of corn future. And of course, when the corn actually arrives, maybe locusts came and ate all the corn, right? So you don't know which way it's going to go. Or maybe it was a bumper crop this year. And so the right to buy at a low price is extremely valuable, right? Like, you just don't know. So that's why it's called a future. But there is an end date. A perpetual future, there is no end date. You're just basically using leverage to bet on an asset, which I'm not going to get into to a large degree. But the thing to realize about that is that, let me show this to you. When you are betting on an asset in the future, in perpetuity, there are other people who are betting against you. So those people that are betting against you, hang on a second, I'm going to switch to optimism. 1 second. Yes, switch networks. Okay, so now I'm looking at Ethereum perps right here. And you can basically leverage up to 50x on Ethereum. And the way you do that is you're effectively borrowing from everyone else who is betting in the opposite direction. And right now, we can open this up a little bit. You can see the funding rate. I'm going to put it up to, I'm going to first of all do it 24 hours. So the funding rate, there's always sort of a skew of the amount of people who are betting long versus short. So the people that are betting long, typically, especially right now, because Ethereum ETFs have been approved, typically outweigh those who are betting short. So more people are using leverage, betting that Ethereum is going to go up in value. So that's a much larger contingent than the people who are short. So because of this imbalance, there is something called a funding rate. And this is paid by the larger party to the smaller party to fund the ongoing maintenance of the system. There's basically, this is to keep the accounting honest. There's always losses or gains in one direction or the other. And so every 8 hours or so, I guess it's every block. It's settled up. Oh, sorry. No, it's every 8 hours in this system. I apologize. This is Quenta. So every 8 hours, the funding rate is paid, but from that large party to the smaller party, for the privilege of remaining short or long in the minority group. And because it's typically in favor of the shorts, on the year scale here, you can see the funding rate being paid by the longs to the shorts is 77.8%. And this is the case most of the time in Ethereum. It's by far, 85% of the time, the funding rate is positive. So So that is where the yield is actually coming from in the Ethena system. So they're actually grabbing it from the funding rate. So this is pretty interesting. And it's actually real yield. Now, the other place the yield is coming from is from staked Ethereum. So in the Ethereum ecosystem, if it requires people, because it's a proof of stake system, the validators require Ethereum to be staked on their behalf in order to validate transactions in the system. So if you stake your Ethereum, you are now a validator participating as basically a miner in that system. They don't use that word, they use validator. But you're collecting transaction fees. That's your reward for validating transactions. And so, it's roughly 4% over time. When you stake your Ethereum, if you stake it with something like Lido, which is a staked Ethereum specialist system, they will give you a staked ETH token back. And that staked ETH token is now liquid. So this is called liquid staking, because even though your Ethereum is staked and collecting revenue in the form of transaction fees at 4%, the code check represents your position in the staked Ethereum transaction collecting business. So this is like a deed to that. It's a code check, which is worth the same as that, right? So whatever your Ethereum is worth, your staked ETH is worth exactly the same, but it's liquid. You can now go and use this in other protocols. You can, because if I give it to you, I no longer have the right to my coat in the coat check. You do. You can go get my coat, right? So this is the same as the Ethereum. It's for all intents and purposes. So staked Ethereum is pegged to Ethereum usually, and there are mechanisms to keep these totally pegged to one another. So 4% is coming from the staked ETH, and then they take that staked ETH token and they put it into a short position, right? So it's effectively a long because it's staked Ethereum on Ethereum, and then they hedge it in the opposite direction, and they create what is known as a delta neutral position. So if Ethereum goes up in value, then the short position goes down in value the exact amount. And if the opposite happens, if Ethereum goes down in value, then the short position goes up in value while the actual ETH that's used as collateral goes down in value. So basically it always zeroes out. So if I put $1 worth of staked Ethereum into a short position for Ethereum, that is a stable dollar. And that is how they create the stable dollar in their system, the USDe that I showed you earlier. That's how that's made. And so that stable dollar is now making the 4% from the staked Ethereum in the validator. It's also making an additional average, not always, but average of 16% on the funding rate, right? So because it's staked, it's shorted, they now are the recipients of that funding rate that I showed you earlier. And even though it's higher right now, usually it's around 16%. So that adds up to 20%. They have now found a way to actually give you 20% based on real yield, not doing it fakey style by just printing more Terra, the way the Terra Luna system did. They're actually earning it through transaction fees and through validating on a blockchain like a miner. So those are both legitimate ways, honest ways to make money in crypto, right? So pretty good. Now it's actually making more than that on both of those things, but the protocol needs to make some money. So that's how the protocol is making money, is it's taking a slice of that as it goes by. Now, the other thing to note about this Ethena system is it is capital efficient. $1 worth of staked Ethereum, right, or $1 worth of Ethereum gets you $1 worth of stablecoin. So it doesn't require twice the collateral. It requires 1x the collateral. So not only is it honest money, but it's also very capital efficient. So this is a very new and very clever thing, right? So they've achieved actual chemistry, if you will. It's not alchemy. So the other thing that they do that's kind of that's smart is they do not allow anyone to just mint and burn USDe. They only allow authorized participants. So that on the back end, they have exchanges which are minting and burning USDe in exchange for their collateral of Ethereum or Bitcoin. And these authorized participants, so basically what they're trying to do is avoid the situation where something like a Citadel can come along and tip the whole system over if they acquire too much USDe, right? So they, the Ethena people know and have contracts with the authorized participants. It's very much like an ETF. It's not an ETF, but it's like an ETF. So they're basically protecting themselves against what happened to Terra Luna. So I think this is pretty smart. Now, the other thing that's going on is in these early days of Ethena's existence, they are encouraging people to go out, buy their token, stake it for yield, the USDe token, and in return, they are giving you a bunch of ENA tokens. Now, what is ENA token? ENA token is the governance token for the Ethena ecosystem. Doesn't really do much right now, although people are speculating that down the road, ENA may get dividends on the protocol fees. So it may collect a portion of the revenue or a portion of the profit. It might do profit sharing. There's obviously potentially some securities implications to that. So I don't know if they'll do it. I don't know if they'll just do it and not allow U.S. participants. That's always possible. So we don't know where that's going. Right now, you can vote on the governance of Ethena, and you can vote on things like what assets are used for collateral in the future. So it definitely has voting powers. But the ENA token, they're now giving it away in return in pretty good amounts for staking your USDe in their system. So you're earning the yield, and plus you're getting ENA bonus tokens. And I'm not going to get into the details of that, but those are the basics, and that will stop at some point in the near future. You won't be able to get ENA tokens, so they are being given away, and people are selling them. A lot of people are selling them as soon as they get them. So ENA price is not awesome right now, and it's sort of went up, to $100 and I think $30 or something like that. Crashed back down to like $80 or $70, so it lost like half of its value. But I personally don't think it's going to be that way for long. I've purchased a bunch of ENA, and now I've put it into Pendle. Pendle then gets much better yield on my ENA tokens than I could get just holding them alone. Now, the other thing that people are doing with their ENA tokens, if you stake ENA in with your wallet, your USDe, the yield that you're earning on it gets a boost also. So it's used as sort of a force multiplier. If you're making 20% usually, now you're making 30 or 40% because of the ENA that you've staked to enhance, boost that yield. That won't that won't be that way forever also. But these ENA tokens are in high demand from some parties that want to boost their yield on their stablecoins. So this is a pretty good dynamic. As we've said earlier, yield is one thing that Terra did prove is yield is the killer app of stablecoins, and people just can't seem to get enough of that, right? So treasuries have proven that, because treasuries are exactly the same thing at 5%. So in this crypto universe, you can make 20, 30, 40%. And with ENA, if you're willing to gamble on the value of the ENA token going up, and basically as the governance token for the Ethena ecosystem, if you believe that Ethena will be widely adopted and those ENA tokens are going to be worth a lot of money in the future, you can take those and you can put them into Pendle. And I don't totally understand Pendle, so I'm not going to get too deeply into that. But it effectively will take your ENA, you stake it with them for 3 or 4 months, and you can get 80% APY. So you don't get 0.8x whatever you put in, because it's a 3-month bond. You get roughly 24% or 25% of what you put in, because the maturity comes up in like 100 days. So, but still pretty good, right? You can basically get 20%, let's say, pretty much guaranteed in 3 months on your ENA tokens, right? So if ENA just remains static, you've earned 20% on it, which is a pretty good yield, right? So, okay. Now let's talk about a new kid on the block. Because of the success of Ethena, there's a new kid on the block called BAMK, and they have something called the NUSD token. Now, the NUSD token is a stable coin implemented in 2 places. It's implemented as a BRC20, and it's implemented as a rune on the Bitcoin blockchain. So let's just think about this for a second. They basically figured out a way to create a native stable coin on the Bitcoin blockchain backed by the proof of work of Bitcoin. Pretty cool, right? Now, does this work? We don't know yet, because it's 4 days old. So now, how are they backing their stablecoin? And the answer is they're using Ethena to back it. So at the moment, NUSD is backed 1-for-1 by USDe, which is the stable coin of Ethena. So if you think about it, NUSD is a tether for Ethena, right? So, so it's kind of weird, right? So we've seen this construction before. It's a 1-for-1 backed thing, except, Tether is 1-for-1 backed by, fiat dollars in a fiat bank. This is backed by Ethena stablecoin, SUSD, USDe in Ethereum wallet. So the question is it really there? So let's go and see. Okay, so this is USD BRC20, and this is on OKX. So you can see that they've minted 508, roughly 509,000, 508,900 NUSD tokens. So roughly 500,000 have been minted. The uppermost limit of the supply of BRC20s that can be minted here is 18 quintillion, not quadrillion, but quintillion. So there's the trillions, there's the quadrillions, and this is the quintillion. So, they basically created the supply cap very large so that they would never run out. However, they've only minted a very small portion of that, right? So far, so good. We can see how much has been minted. Now, if I scroll down here, you can see, you can buy $10,000 worth of NUSD, and NUSD is, $1.01 here. So the peg's not exact. So I'm not quite sure how they're keeping this peg. At the moment, it looks like, they're the only ones selling. So they more or less determine what the peg is. So the peg's a little high. It's floating up to 101, 103, because there's ostensibly dollars. There's ostensibly demand for these dollars, right? So that's why. Let me just stop this here. So the question is, do they actually have Ethena backing it, right? So they've given a wallet address. So let's go see if they've actually got the commensurate amount of Ethena in there. Okay, so here's where this is the address they've given for the Ethena. And lo and behold, this is where they have 563 tokens. And what are these tokens? Yes, they're staked USDe. So these are staked and earning yield Ethena stablecoins. And this is the wallet. So yes, they more than back the amount of at least BRC20 NUSD that they've issued. Now, they do have a Rune version as well of this, but that has not been, that's not for sale anywhere yet. So they're only backing the BRC20 version of NUSD. So, it looks legit so far, right? So, hang on a second. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So where is this going? Well, there's a BAMK token, and the BAMK token is issued if you hold NUSD, you don't have to stake it anywhere because there is no way to stake. It's Bitcoin, right? You can't do it. So if you just hold NUSD in your wallet, they are issuing free BAMK tokens, which is their equivalent of the ENA token, right? So it's their protocol token. What will it do in the future? We don't know. But you're effectively making 1,000% APY in BAMK tokens by holding NUSD in your Bitcoin wallet. And BAMK tokens are a Rune token. So it is a token on the Bitcoin blockchain implemented in Runes, not BRC20. Will this be worth a lot in the future? We don't know. But I definitely applaud the attempt to create a Bitcoin native stablecoin. And right now, it relies entirely on Ethena under the hood. Where's this going in the future? Well, they basically said they're gonna re-implement something like Ethena and create delta neutral positions with Bitcoin, and effectively do kind of the same thing that Ethena is doing, just do it in everything in Bitcoin native. But that appears to be far in the future. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. I'm also not sure how they're maintaining their peg. There's no way to. There's nothing that says that people can't sell NUSD for higher or lower than $1. So I don't know. They don't appear to have the heft yet to sort of enforce that peg. So the peg may fall apart while it's at sort of low power, or it might not. I'm not sure how they're doing it. So this does appear to be It's an interesting attempt. I don't know if it'll work. Ethena, I have studied very deeply, and I've spent a lot of time sort of, looking at all the ways it could fall apart. They seem to. There is risk. There's always risk, but Ethena seems to have caged the risk very well. They've studied what happened to Terra Luna, and they're basically not repeating those mistakes. And they found a way to make real yield. As I said, they're not just printing new USDe. So there's a lot to like there. I mean, I think the risks are basically that their system relies on staked ETH and Ethereum, that peg remaining perfect. And if for some reason that falls apart, like Lido staked ETH, let's just say that gets hacked, and all of a sudden the peg between Lido staked ETH and regular Ethereum starts to fall apart, then their whole system falls apart also because it relies on that being perfectly aligned. So that's one danger. The funding rates could not be positive. For whatever reason, people start shorting Ethereum instead of longing it en masse, and the funding rates go negative. Now, all of a sudden, they owe the system money. That system's not paying them anymore. It's eating into their stablecoin. So that could be a danger. But historically, and we're talking over like a 4 or 5 year period, in boom years and bust years, people just for whatever reason go long ETH more than they go short. And that's been, even in the worst of times and even in the best of times, that's been the case. Now that an Ethereum ETF has been approved, it's probably a pretty safe bet, at least for the foreseeable future, that there will be more people trying to long ETH with leverage. And so, at least for the next year, maybe 2 years, something like that, it feels like. So I think Ethena is in a very, very good position. This new NUSD thing, I guess it relies on Bitcoin and Ethereum being longed more than shorted. So it seems like it's an interesting idea. And if they do crack native stablecoin on Bitcoin, that will be the largest market of all, because the richest of the rich are in Bitcoin. They're not in Ethereum or other things, at least not yet. They may never be in it the way that they're in the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin looks like it's going to gain acceptance at the retirement fund level, at the governmental level, much more so than it has done to date. So if that happens, dear God, a stable coin that's Bitcoin native should do very well. It might even eclipse Tether. It might even eclipse Ethena. So, but you got to think that Ethena is looking at this also and kind of thinking the same thing. So, I don't endorse any of these things. I like all of them. I think that all of them, I'm pretty sure, based on my own analysis of Ethena, is that it is solid. I'm not there yet on NUSD. I think it's a very interesting experiment. I applaud it. I hope it works. I am cheering for it. I'm rooting for it. I see nothing obvious that looks bad so far. There is nothing that prevents them, so far as I can see, from minting, a quadrillion NUSD. Without having the backing of Ethena. There's no mechanism, there's no smart contract that confines them from doing that. So I guess that's one risk. But Tether has the same risk, right? So Tether can, so same thing with USDC. We don't know. We can't see what's in their bank accounts. We don't know. We just have to take their word for it that they have the fiat dollars in the bank, commensurate to the amount of stable coins that they're issuing. They might not. So the same is true of NUSD, but at least there's a Ethereum wallet they're pointing us to. They say is theirs. We don't know if it is, but they say it's theirs. And we can at least see the amount of Ethena stablecoins that are in that versus the amount of NUSD they've issued. So that's not bad. That's better than Tether or USDC. So it's not horrible. I at least feel decently good about that. Okay, so it's been kind of a long lesson here. This is a kind of a specialty stablecoin spectacular hash rate. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I encourage you to go out and look at these things. I don't encourage you to buy them. It's not financial advice, but I do encourage you to go look at them because these things are pretty interesting. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.